Canada's major party leaders debate their respective foreign policies and Canada's place in the world. And I was very much looking forward to standing on a shared stage with Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, and Elizabeth May, challenging their policies and having my policies challenged in return. And whatever our differences, I want to commend Mr. Singh and Ms. May for being prepared to defend their foreign policy plans in public so Canadians can make an informed decision. We should all be clear. There is only one reason why we are not having this important debate, because Justin Trudeau has something to hide. 4 years ago, he eagerly participated in this exact same debate. Of course, back then, Trudeau claimed to value openness and transparency. Those were the days. And now we know that Justin Trudeau was not and is not as advertised. He has spent this campaign avoiding accountability, hiding from debates, and refusing to answer difficult questions. Nous savons maintenant que Justin Trudeau n'était pas et n'est toujours pas celui qu'il prétendait être. Il passe cette campagne à éviter de rendre des comptes, à fuir les débats et à refuser de répondre aux questions difficiles. Now I get part of the reason. His disastrous India trip made international headlines and turned Canada into a laughingstock around the globe. But Trudeau's failure on the world stage goes far beyond his personal behavior. It is about a record of failure in our international commitments. He's politicized the Canadian Armed Forces and betrayed veterans, surrendered Canadian jobs in one-sided trade deals, and abandoned our allies in the fight against extremism and terrorism. He's humiliated himself and Canadians by inviting terrorists on foreign trips and sent Canadian tax dollars abroad to enrich some of the wealthiest and worst regimes in the world. Whether we are talking about Justin Trudeau's previous praise for China's basic dictatorship or his gushing praise for the repressive Castro regime in Cuba, or his $10 million payout to Omar Khadr, it is clear that on foreign policy and human rights, like so much else, Justin Trudeau is not as advertised. It is clear
that when it comes to foreign policy and human rights, Justin Trudeau is not the person he claimed to be.
You deserve better. Because make no mistake, foreign policy is important, particularly for Canadians whose families come from places like Hong Kong, China, India, Pakistan, Israel, the Middle East, Ukraine, Venezuela, or Russia. Or for Canadians who want to evaluate Trudeau's failure to fight global climate change. Or for those worried about their jobs after all of Trudeau's concessions to Donald Trump on NAFTA. There is a better way. And that's why this morning I'm going to share with you the points I intended to make during the Monk debate, and my 4-point plan for foreign affairs and national security. First, we're going to reprioritize foreign aid so that it is focused on countries in greatest need while using the savings to help Canadians like you get ahead. Second, we are going to reinvigorate our traditional allegiances with countries that share Canadian values. Third, we're going to reprioritize human rights in our international affairs and embrace new legal tools through which we can hold hostile regimes accountable. And fourth, we will depoliticize military procurement to prevent future partisan abuses. Et mon plan en 4 points sur les affaires étrangères et la sécurité nationale. Premièrement, nous allons changer les priorités de l'aide étrangère pour l'accès sur les pays qui en ont le plus besoin et utiliser les économies réalisées pour vous aider à améliorer votre quotidien. Deuxièmement, nous allons renforcer nos alliances traditionnelles avec les pays qui partagent les valeurs canadiennes. Troisièmement, nous allons changer les priorités sur les droits de la personne dans nos affaires internationales et adopter de nouveaux outils juridiques pour tenir les régimes hostiles responsables. Et quatrièmement, nous allons dépolitiser l'approvisionnement militaire pour prévenir les futurs abus partisans.
Partisan abuse.
Let's start by talking about foreign aid. Canadians are generous, and we want to help those around us in need. The vast majority of Canada's foreign aid is well spent on humanitarian assistance to countries mired in structural poverty or facing a humanitarian crisis. But under Justin Trudeau, a significant chunk of Canadian foreign aid money does not fit that description. The Trudeau government today sends $2.2 billion of so-called foreign aid to middle and upper income countries like Argentina, Barbados, Brazil, China, Iran, Italy, Mexico, and Turkey. Worse still, some of that money is shoveled to repressive regimes that are adversarial, if not outright hostile to Canadian interests and values. Countries like Iran, North Korea, and Russia. Trudeau has also spent $110 million on the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which is openly anti-Semitic and continues to support terrorist organizations like Hamas. At a time when Canadians are working harder than ever and not getting ahead, Trudeau is using their hard-earned tax dollars to support anti-Semitic organizations and prop up foreign dictatorships. It's time for Canada to put our money where our mouth is and only use foreign aid to support the Canadian values we hold dear. A new Conservative government will review Canada's overall foreign aid funding with a target of reducing the overall envelope by approximately 25%. We will cut 25% in foreign aid currently going to corrupt regimes and middle and higher income countries. It will start by taking the money that Justin Trudeau is currently squandering overseas and spending it at home to provide much needed and long overdue help to Canadian families so they can get ahead. We will
reduce foreign aid funding by 25%. This is money that is currently being provided to corrupt and middle and upper income
spend that
countries.
money here at home on things like our universal tax cut that will save every single Canadian taxpayer hundreds of dollars a year. Our children's tax credits that will make your kids' hockey registration and art classes more affordable. Our increase to the age credit that will put more money back in the pockets of every senior. Our boost to the RESP that will make it easier to save for your child's post-secondary education. Our tax-free maternity benefits so new parents have more money to spend on those expensive first months of life. Our green public transit tax credit that makes it more affordable to take the bus or the train to work. And our green home renovation tax credit that will lower emissions and help Canadians pay for green upgrades to their homes. In short, our plan will take your hard-earned tax dollars away from dictators and relatively wealthy countries and put them back in your pockets so that you can get ahead. There is still an important place for foreign aid, and in fact, we will redirect $700 million in aid to countries with grave humanitarian or refugee challenges, such as much of sub-Saharan Africa, which will receive even more aid than they do now. We will ensure a special focus on support for children in conflict zones. Under my plan, we will work with leading Canadian aid organizations, including volunteer focus groups who provide much-needed assistance to developing countries. And we will continue to consider proposals which support non-development objectives such as minority rights and peaceful coexistence taking place in any country. This is the kind of global leadership that the world needs more of. One area where we will look to build a new international consensus will be on protecting children in conflict zones. Second, we will reinvigorate allegiances with countries and allies that share Canadian values. We will renew and strengthen ties with Canada's democratic alliances such as NATO, NORAD, and the Five Eyes, while at the same time strengthening relations with like-minded countries like Japan and India. We'll take a leadership role in building a stronger CANZUK alliance between Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. My government will also renew Canada's historic support for Ukraine and take steps to help Ukraine secure its borders and defend its people. This will include expanding on current missions to support Ukraine and providing Ukraine's military with the equipment they need to defend their borders. I will also push for Canadian leadership in a United Nations peacekeeping mission to secure those borders. Je vais aussi insister sur le leadership canadien à une mission de maintien de la paix des Nations Unies afin de protéger les frontières.
To protect the borders.
At the same time, we'll pull Canadian funding from international organizations that run contrary to Canada's interests, such as the Asian Infrastructure Bank, and use the savings to help pay for our plan to help you get ahead. No longer will Canadian tax dollars subsidize the government of China's foreign policy. Third, we'll introduce new tools to support human rights around the world. Canada has Magnitsky human rights legislation that targets foreign officials who are complicit in human rights abuses. But Justin Trudeau has not used it where it's most needed. We will. In particular, we will target Iran, which routinely abuses human rights, has murdered Canadian citizens, sponsors terrorism, and has violated nuclear treaties. At the same time, we will list Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist entity under Canadian law. We'll also amend the Investment Canada Act so that the takeover of any Canadian company by any foreign state-owned enterprise automatically triggers a national security review. And we will reopen the Office of Religious Freedom, Trudeau shut down, in order to protect the rights of religious minorities all over the world. Fourth, we will take steps to depoliticize military procurement. Canadians saw firsthand how partisan politics corrupts military procurement during the Mark Norman affair. Justin Trudeau's attempt to destroy Vice Admiral Norman, a competent, dedicated, and accomplished military hero, was a national disgrace. That is why my government will reintroduce the Cabinet Committee on Defence Procurement and create a procurement secretariat within the Privy Council office to ensure that priority projects are progressing on time and on budget. Les Canadiens ont vu comment la politique partisane peut corrompre l'approvisionnement militaire lors de l'affaire Mark Norman. La tentative de Justin Trudeau de détruire le vice-admiral Norman, un héros militaire compétent, dévoué et accompli, a été une honte nationale.
Was a national disgrace, and that's why my government will restore the Cabinet Committee on Defence Procurement and create a procurement secretariat within the Privy Council to ensure that priority projects go ahead on time and on budget.
Just as importantly, we will refocus the House of Commons Committee on National Defence on matters of military procurement to foster a multi-partisan consensus. We will not delay in selecting a new fighter jet to replace our aging CF-18s. While negotiating with Davie shipyards to provide a second supply ship, icebreakers, and federal ferries. These four pillars, prioritizing Canadians over foreign dictators in foreign aid, recommitting to our allies, putting human rights at the forefront of our global agenda, and taking the partisan politics out of military procurement. Those pillars will form the foundation of our Conservative plan to reclaim Canadian leadership on the world stage. Let me close by making this point, because in the context of foreign policy, it is a very important one. Justin Trudeau ultimately has to answer to the Canadian people at the ballot box on October 21st. In so many other countries, people are unable to hold disgraced and dishonest leaders accountable for their conduct. But in Canada, we do. And it is up to all of us to use that franchise and get out and vote. Canadians deserve a Prime Minister who will not break the law, who will not abuse his power to cover it up, and who will not embarrass them on the world stage. Instead, they deserve a Prime Minister who will do everything in their power to return Canada to a place of honour and leadership around the world, while doing more to help hardworking families right here at home get ahead. That is my promise to the Canadian people, and I humbly ask for your support on October 21st. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Happy to take your questions.
Good morning, Mr. Scheer. Giuseppe Valiante, the Canadian Press. I noticed that during the speech you just gave, you didn't speak about abortion or maternal health for women and girls internationally as something that was important to the past two governments of Canada. Would a Conservative government, led by you, commit to funding abortion services internationally?
So the announcement that I made today does not affect groups who are currently receiving funding. This is not about which types of groups will receive funding. This is about which types of countries will receive those fundings. And so those types of groups will not be affected by this announcement. Oui, alors nous allons, j'ai fait un engagement de ne pas réouvrir ce débat. L'annonce d'aujourd'hui va avoir aucun impact sur les groupes qui reçoivent l'argent canadien dans les pays qu'on va continuer d'appuyer.
So that will continue. Because a couple of months ago, the Liberal government introduced about $700 million new dollars. I think it's about $1.4 billion by 2023, and $700 million specifically for reproductive health for women and girls. So a Conservative government would not touch that funding?
So exactly. What this is about is which countries are receiving the funding, not which types of programs or which types of groups. This is a measure to take foreign aid funding away from countries that rank relatively high on the development index and prioritizing that to countries that need it more and bringing that funding back here at home to help Canadians get ahead. So this announcement today will not have an impact on groups that will continue to receive funding in countries that we will continue to provide support for. So that is our commitment.
Bonjour, Monsieur Scheer, Fanny Olivier de Radio-Canada. La plupart des pays de l'OCDE donnent plus que nous en aide internationale au prorata du PIB. Alors que l'économie canadienne va de mieux en mieux, va très bien, comment allez-vous justifier auprès des alliés, de nos alliés, ces coupes en aide internationale, et est-ce que vous attendez à des conséquences de la part de nos alliés?
Notre philosophie, c'est que des pays qui sont très élevés dans les indices de développement n'ont pas besoin le même appui que les autres. Et ça, c'est un choix. Nous avons fait notre choix. On va rediriger l'argent de l'enveloppe pour l'aide étrangère pour 25% pour appuyer les Canadiens. Nous avons tous entendu le fait que les familles, les individus ont plus en plus de difficultés de joindre les deux bouts. Et ça, c'est notre priorité, cette élection, d'améliorer le quotidien pour les Canadiens et Canadiennes.
Allez-vous continuer avec la politique d'aide féministe du gouvernement Trudeau?
Alors, comme j'ai dit, cette annonce aujourd'hui va avoir aucun impact sur les groupes qui va continuer de travailler dans les pays qui continuent de recevoir l'argent canadien. Ça, c'est une question de quel pays on va donner l'argent des contribuables.
Louis Blouin de Radio-Canada. Monsieur Scheer, vous dites que vous voulez couper l'aide aux pays qui sont hostiles au Canada, mais dans les faits, ce sont les populations locales de ces pays-là qui vont souffrir du retrait de l'aide canadienne. Vous êtes à l'aise avec ça?
Je suis convaincu que les Canadiens préfèrent que l'argent des contribuables ne vont pas à les régimes hostiles, les régimes qui utilisaient l'argent canadien pour appuyer le gouvernement. Il y a beaucoup d'argent qui était dans l'espèce de gouvernement à gouvernement. Alors, on va couper l'aide étrangère par 25% pour assurer que les Canadiens pourront améliorer leur sort.
Qu'est-ce que vous diriez à ceux qui remarquent que plusieurs mesures qui sont annoncées aujourd'hui semblent tirer des priorités de votre prédécesseur, Stephen Harper?
Cette campagne, cette élection, c'est un choix entre les libéraux et le Parti conservateur, un choix entre Justin Trudeau et moi-même. Et c'est clair que mon priorité, c'est d'assurer que les Canadiens vont avoir plus dans leur poche dès maintenant. Et on va couper 25% de l'enveloppe pour l'aide étrangère pour assurer que les familles, les travailleurs pourront joindre les deux bouts pour avancer. Et ça, c'est le choix. Le gouvernement, Justin Trudeau doit justifier la raison pour laquelle il a envoyé l'argent canadien à les pays comme Italie, Brésil et Iran. Il a fait son choix. J'ai fait mon choix. So this is a very clear choice this election between Justin Trudeau's record on foreign policy and on foreign aid. And Canadians now can see the choice that between sending more of their hard-earned tax dollars to countries that rank relatively high on the development index, countries like Italy, like Brazil, like Turkey, and hostile governments like Iran. Justin Trudeau has made his choice. I have made my choice. We'll redirect that money here at home to help Canadians get ahead.
Janice McGregor from CBC News. Canada is currently in a campaign for a seat on the United Nations Security Council. What impact do you see a substantial cut in the foreign assistance budget having on Canada's bid?
Well, Canada, our allies around the world know our capabilities when it comes to pulling our weight on the world stage and the commitment that we've made in many conflicts over the past 150 plus years. So I'm confident that our allies will see that. But it's more important to me that I help Canadians get ahead than curry favor at the United Nations. I am more interested in making sure that hardworking Canadian families get ahead, that they have more in their pockets, that they're able to provide for their families, raise their children, and achieve their goals. That is our priority, that is our focus. Je suis plus intéressé dans la qualité de vie pour les Canadiens et Canadiennes. C'est mon priorité. Je crois que nos alliés peuvent comprendre notre contribution pendant notre histoire contre les menaces globales. Mais mon priorité, c'est d'améliorer le sort des Canadiens et Canadiennes, pas de gang d'appui des Nations Unies.
I want to make sure I understand the vision you're articulating here. Would future Conservative government in Canada pursue more of a go-it-alone strategy like we've seen in the United States recently? Would this be a withdrawal from some of the multilateralism that has been part of Liberal foreign policy, pulling back from other things, perhaps like the World Trade Organization and our efforts to reform there?
This is specifically quite the contrary. What I've called for today is a more reinvigorated partnership with our traditional allies through NATO and through countries that share our same commitments to democracy, the rule of law, and peace and security. Stronger ties with countries like Japan and India. What this is pulling money out of things like the Asian Infrastructure Bank, which does not further Canadians' interests, which is controlled by the government of China, to build roads and bridges and other projects in other countries. So this is about reinvigorating our relationship, strengthening our relationship on a multilateral level with our traditional allies and countries that share our same values, and ensuring that Canadian taxpayers' dollars are not going to countries that have a relatively high income or a relatively high development index. So this is about reprioritizing that money here at home to help Canadians get ahead, and also focusing part of that foreign aid budget to countries that need it the most.
So if you can't control the membership of a global organization to not include those countries, you'd pull back from that?
Well, as I said, I don't see any reason why Canadian tax dollars are going to the Asian Infrastructure Bank. That is a choice. If Justin Trudeau thinks that Canadians are happy with their tax dollars going to build roads and bridges in other countries, he can certainly make that case. This is a choice for Canadians to make. We've made it very clear where we're going with foreign aid money and with foreign policy. Stronger relationships with our traditional allies and countries that share our values, and foreign aid money going to the countries that need it the most, with a significant portion of the existing budget being repatriated, coming back home to help Canadians get ahead, to put more money in the pockets of Canadians so that their quality of life can increase.
Hi, Mr. Scheer, Janice Dixon, the Globe and Mail. I'm wondering if you can tell us what you're hoping to achieve at tomorrow night's debate, and specifically what your message would be for would-be Bloc voters.
I'm hoping to show Canadians that Justin Trudeau does not deserve to be re-elected, and I'm just looking forward to the fact that he's actually showing up. So that's a big step for him, and I am confident that Canadians will see that he is unable to defend his 4 years of high taxes, massive deficits, and scandal and corruption. My message to all Quebecers, is that a Conservative government respects the rights of provinces. We believe in respecting provincial jurisdiction, and that we are committed to addressing some specific challenges and specific issues in Quebec, like the single income tax return. So I don't have one message for one group of people. I have the same message for all Quebecers and indeed all Canadians. Oui, alors j'ai hâte finalement d'avoir l'opportunité
I'm looking forward to finally having an opportunity to debate Justin Trudeau. He missed the first two, and I intend to show that he does not deserve a second mandate. He obviously cannot defend his own record with his deficits and scandals. And my message to all Quebecers is that only the Conservative Party can replace Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party. It is our party that respects provincial jurisdiction and that will act on issues that are important to Quebec, such as a single tax return.
You completed your university degree in Regina, but there are records that show that you've completed it at Ottawa University after you became an MP. So can you just clarify exactly what happened with your education?
Sure. I've always been very clear. I took courses at the University of Regina. My degree is granted from the University of Ottawa, where I took the bulk of my classes. The overwhelming majority of my classes were from Ottawa.
Hi there, Mr. Scheer, Salima Shivji, CBC. You talk about depoliticizing the system, yet in the policy it also talks about negotiating a contract with Davie Shipyards to build a supply ship. I just wonder what sort of message that sends when, of course, Davie is located in a Conservative riding in Quebec in terms of when you're talking about depoliticizing processes.
Well, it's actually undoing the politicization that the Liberals created when they pulled that original contract. Davie Shipyards had an innovative model that delivered a supply ship on time and on budget, actually under time, And that was precisely what Justin Trudeau interfered with the Mark Norman case. So it's actually undoing the damage that Justin Trudeau has made.
But if you state specifically that you will negotiate a contract with a specific company, I'm just saying what kind of optics does it
right,
in general?
but as I said, that contract would have gone through had Justin Trudeau not interfered and not canceled that. So it's actually depoliticizing it by going back to the original plan, where Canadian taxpayers got more bang for their buck and the military got the equipment that they needed. So it's a key part of depoliticizing it, is undoing the politicization of the Trudeau Liberals. Oui, c'est clair que les décisions de Justin Trudeau étaient basées sur les politiques, pas sur les besoins de nos
based on politics and not on the requirements of the Canadian Armed Forces. So we will correct that mistake and ensure, as Davy did,
le premier contrat,
with the first contract, bring in the project on time and on budget.
Mr. Scheer, you've been pretty consistent throughout the campaign. When questions about same-sex marriage policy have come up, you've been very consistent. We're not going to reopen the debate. That was 2005. This is 2019. I get all that. I just want to clarify one thing. Not how you would govern, but just who you are, what you believe in your heart, basically. Do you feel that same-sex marriage is just as morally equivalent as traditional marriage?
As I said, I have, at the time that this debate was before Canadians, like many members of Parliament who voted on different sides of this issue, there were Liberals and NDP even voting on different sides of this issue. Society has moved on. I have moved on. I will always defend the rights of LGBTQ Canadians. I respect them. I believe that the government must be a champion for their rights, and I will continue to do that.
I understand that, Mr. Scheer, but that's not what I'm asking. This is a straightforward yes or no about who you are, not Andrew Scheer, prospective Prime Minister, but just Andrew Scheer, the person. Do you feel, yes or no, that same-sex marriage is just as morally equivalent as traditional marriage?
I believe in the equality rights of all Canadians. I believe in the equality rights of LGBTQ Canadians. I believe that the law must be there to protect them and give them the same access and the same types of supports in the same institutions. And I will continue to govern that way. I was proud to participate in the historic apology to LGBTQ Canadians who were persecuted in the public service because of their sexual orientation. I have called on the government to do more to help people being persecuted because of their sexual orientation in other countries. I'll continue to be a champion for LGBTQ Canadians.
Glenn McGregor, CTV News. I wanted you to clarify what you said a few moments ago about maternal health and abortion rights as related to foreign aid funding. You said you wouldn't touch agreements that were in place already. What about moving forward? Will abortion rights factor into any foreign aid decisions that Canada makes?
As I said, I'm very clear on this. We are not reopening this debate at any level. What this is about is which types of countries will receive financial assistance. And so groups that are receiving funding will continue to receive funding going into the future. This decision does not affect groups or programs going forward.
Okay. Well, one of your candidates in Quebec said that he would like to have seen you participate in the climate marches last Friday. When you see the footage from those marches, the hundreds of thousands of people all across the country, do you think maybe you've miscalculated this issue, that you are out of step with Canadians on this?
Not at all. And again, I find it completely ironic, almost funny, but certainly hypocritical, that Justin Trudeau was protesting his own record. And he doesn't seem to be aware of his actions on that and the message that was signaling. I was very proud to make an announcement talking about improving the quality of life of Canadians and investing in public transit. And our plan for the environment gives Canada the best plan the best opportunity to achieve our Paris targets. So while Justin Trudeau can make symbolic acts, he's always been terrible on actually following through with results. That's what our focus is on. Right. Well, look, we have sent a message to every Canadian who is concerned about the environment that we have a real plan, and that we're taking this seriously, that we're going to get rid of the carbon tax because it raises the cost of everything without doing anything for the environment, and replace it with a real plan that takes the climate change fight global. And as I said, I've seen lots of footage and lots of pictures from that, from those demonstrations, a lot of signs saying actions, not words. That's precisely what our party is focused on, real results to help tackle global climate change by lowering global emissions.
Hi, Charlie Mitchell, Times of London. Do you have any regrets about publicly supporting Brexit, given the upheaval that it has caused?
So, as I've said in the past, I've always believed in the rights of people, rights of countries, and the people in those countries to chart their own course and to have sovereignty. I've always felt that that is a fundamental principle. And I'm focused on foreign policy issues here today, like Canada's development aid, which countries receive funding from hardworking Canadian taxpayers.
Just as a follow-up, have you been approached by any British officials about the prospect of a trade deal, and if so, what was the progress of those discussions?
Well, I was very proud to have visited the United Kingdom last year, where I specifically met with British members of Parliament, including then Minister of Trade Boris Johnson, and now Prime Minister, to talk precisely about ensuring that Canada's trade access with the United Kingdom could proceed no matter the eventuality of the negotiations with the European Union.
And just quickly, one little follow-up. Are you willing to roll over the CETA to the UK in the event of a no-deal Brexit?
Well, look, I think there are a lot of hypotheticals in that question. Obviously, our party always supports free trade. We believe in free and open trade with our partners who have similar rule of law. I mean, we're thinking about the United Kingdom, same parliamentary tradition, same rule of law, same commitment to global values, and obviously ensuring that we maintain at the very least what we have now is very important for our government. But obviously that will be subject to negotiations and to see what the eventual outcome is.
David Aiken, Global News. Good morning, Mr. Scheer. Just coming back to the answer on the United Nations Security Council seat, I'm going to read between the lines that you've pretty much given up on that, but feel free to correct the record in the answer to this question, which is this: Canada's place in the world. We're a small middle power. Overseas development assistance is one of the biggest ways that we can be influential in the world. Pulling it back will make us less influential. Seeking to just hang out with our own club, NORAD, NATO, whatever, however important that is, makes us less influential. And so when China kidnaps 3 of our citizens and we need help, we won't have friends because your policy will make us smaller in the world. Care to argue?
Quite the contrary.
Okay.
First of all, on the UN security seat, as I said, I believe our allies around the world have seen the contribution and the commitment that Canada has made in so many of the evils that we've faced since our country was founded. Side by side, our allies fighting terrorism, side by side fighting in 2 world wars, including conflicts in Korea. So I think our allies know what we're capable of. But when it comes to obtaining that seat by using Canadian taxpayers' dollars to be sent to countries that rank relatively high, middle and high income countries, that is a disagreement. That is a choice that I would not make. I would take that money, bring it back here at home to help Canadians get ahead. I actually believe that by strengthening our relationship with traditional partners like NATO and NORAD, we would have more influence on the world. And it was precisely Justin Trudeau's decision at the beginning of his mandate to shift our focus away from our traditional allies that I believe is precisely why we're in the situation we're in. I will note that under his foreign policy, the government of China has taken this action by holding Canadian citizens while we were still making these types of funding programs in these types of countries. Justin Trudeau has done precisely nothing to show the government of China that we will stand up for ourselves. I've called on him to appoint an ambassador much earlier than he did. It took him 9 months to do so, to challenge China's decision on our exports to the World Trade Organization. He only did that in the dying days of his government before the election. I've called for increased inspections on goods coming from China, which would not just send a message to the government of China, but would also allow us to crack down on things like fentanyl coming into our cities. So his foreign policy has been a complete failure. I will make sure that a Conservative government stands up for Canada's interests and Canadians around the world. C'est pas une question d'abandonner, c'est une question de comment on va l'accomplir. Et Justin Trudeau a fait son choix, il va dépenser l'argent des contribuables dans les pays comme Italie, Mexique, Brésil. J'ai fait un autre choix. Je crois que nos alliés peuvent comprendre l'histoire de notre militaire et l'histoire de notre pays. Mais je ne veux pas dépenser l'argent des contribuables pour un siège comme ça.
Such as that. I've made my choice. I will cut foreign aid by 25% so that Canadians can get ahead.
You referenced the Omar Khadr settlement in your remarks. And, you know, I think a lot of Canadians would say, we can quibble about the amount Cotter got paid, but he was going to get a check because of the sins of Prime Ministers Harper and Chrétien failing to repatriate him so Cotter could face Canadian justice. So if you're Prime Minister, to avoid having to pay money out to wrong terrorists, will you commit today to repatriating any Canadian caught on the battlefields in Syria and Iraq fighting for ISIS, bring them home so they can face justice here in Canada? Will you do that when you become Prime Minister?
Well, first of all, I need to correct something in your premise. I don't believe that we should just abandon the idea that that Omar Khadr deserved that money. I don't think we should just accept that he was entitled to that money or he was going to get it anyway. Court rulings indicated that the compensation that Omar Khadr was entitled to was repatriation, that was his compensation. Getting to come back to Canada after what he did was the compensation for what happened to him. And that would be as far as I would be prepared to compensate him without a further decision. Justin Trudeau abandoned that court case. He refused to fight for the principle that Omar Khadr did not deserve a single dollar of taxpayers' money. He rolled over on that. Now, I contrast that to his continual fighting our veterans in court. So the hypocrisy of Justin Trudeau saying it's not worth fighting the principle for giving, it's not worth fighting for the principles, and we're going to cut Omar Khadr a check to avoid a court case, and then turning around and spending millions of dollars on lawyers fighting veterans. That is a choice he has made. That is not the choice I would make. Now, when it comes to terrorists and people who have fought for ISIS and horrible organizations around the world that commit grievous, horrendous crimes, I would not lift a finger to help bring them back to Canada.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, everyone. Merci beaucoup.